With You on the Day the World Ends Season 4 is coming with excitement. In the previous season, Hibiki finally found Kurumi, but she had already been infected by the virus. In the end, she asked Hibiki to kill her, and their child went missing. Hibiki is crawling on the ground with difficulty. Seeing a small gecko nearby, he grabs it and stuffs it into his mouth. At that moment, a zombie climbs onto Hibiki's leg from behind. He turns around, presses the zombie down, and kills it with an axe. 20 months have passed since Kurumi's death, but Hibiki has never given up searching for his missing child. While running, Hibiki steps on a trap. In an instant, a large net covers him, suspending him in the air. He is then taken to a prison. Soichi tells the others to lock Hibiki up first and decide what to do with him later. Hibiki is pushed into a cell. His body is weak, and he sits on the ground, exhausted. Curious prisoners approach and ask him questions. When Hibiki doesn't respond, the man kicks him. Another prisoner quickly stops the man and asks Hibiki in a gentle tone, introducing himself. It turns out they were already imprisoned before the apocalypse. One day, zombies appeared and devoured all the guards. Later, this group of people came, killed the zombies, and took over the place. They are from the Niyama Foundation. The leader here is Asuha, the daughter of the Foundation's president. Asuha is kind-hearted and even gives food to the prisoners, though some people in the Foundation complain about it. One of the prisoners looks very honest. When Daichi hands him food, he expresses deep gratitude. Daichi smiles and gets up. As he continues distributing food to a woman, she suddenly takes him hostage. The woman demands the Foundation hand over the keys and release her. The other prisoners start to riot, but in the next second, Soichi shoots the woman with an arrow and then subjects her to brutal electric shocks. The next moment, Asuha, the Foundation president's daughter, rushes over and stops Soichi's impulsive actions. She keeps emphasizing the importance of love and compassion. Daichi's glasses fall and break. Kaito trembles as he says that he used to be a watch repairman and might be able to fix the glasses. Soichi initially refuses, as he does not trust prisoners, but since Daichi frequently delivers food, he believes this prisoner is a good person and decides to trust him, allowing him to come out. At this moment, Soichi explains Hibiki's situation to Asuha. Asuha orders Hibiki to be brought out, but suddenly, someone shouts, "Wait!" Looking again, it turns out to be Kane. It turns out Kane left the cult later on and is now under Asuha's command. She asks Hibiki why he is here and what happened afterward. However, Hibiki seems mentally unstable at this moment. His mind is consumed with thoughts of his child, Mirai. He suddenly pushes Kane down and demands, "Did you take Mirai?" But in the next second, Hibiki is restrained by the others. Soichi kicks him hard and punches him repeatedly. Asuha hurriedly stopped them and ordered someone to give Hibiki water and food. Hibiki devours the food immediately, but the next moment, he suddenly hears the cry of a child. Meanwhile, Kaito was repairing Daichi's glasses. He pointed at them and said they were missing a small part. The man next to him bent down to take a look. In an instant, Kaito struck, stabbing the man to death with a pen. After pretending to be an honest man for so long, he finally seized his chance. Kaito stunned Daichi with a taser, then went to the cells and knocked out the guards. All the prisoners cheered wildly, and in the next moment, they all escaped. As they were celebrating, an arrow suddenly shot through one of the prisoners. It was Soichi and his group. Soichi fires another arrow, and the prisoners realize they are still trapped, prompting them to flee. On the other side, Hibiki became excited after hearing the child's cry. The news of the prisoners' escape reached this side, and everyone stopped paying attention to Hibiki, preparing to capture the fugitives. Hibiki took the chance to escape and made his way outside the prison. Soichi and his group tried to suppress the prisoners, but there were too many of them. For safety reasons, they decided to retreat, but unexpectedly, they ran into 5 prisoners head-on. At that moment, Hibiki suddenly rolled out from the bushes nearby. Despite his weakened state, he manages to take down all the prisoners. Then he crawled toward Asuha, demanding that she give him the child in her arms. But a man stepped forward and declared that it was his child. His wife had died, and the child was all he had left. Hibiki refused to accept the truth. He furiously pounded the ground, then got up again to demand the child. Seeing the situation escalate, Asuha tackles Hibiki to the ground, and one of the men strikes Hibiki from behind. Yura stepped forward and handcuffed Hibiki and Asuha's hands together. She used Asuha to restrain Hibiki, giving them a chance to escape. To everyone's surprise, they actually abandoned Asuha and ran away. Hibiki tries to chase after them but is held back by the handcuffs and reluctantly gives up. Hibiki raised the knife, preparing to cut off Asuha's hand. As he grabbed her by the collar, he suddenly noticed the ring she was wearing, the one he had given to his wife, Kurumi. Staring at the ring, Hibiki questioned Asuha. Asuha explained that a man who had gone to Utopia had brought it back. Hibiki, now agitated, demands to know where the man is now. Asuha then led Hibiki to the infirmary. Meanwhile, Soichi and his team ambush the prisoners, which angers the fugitives, and they begin to fight back. Because the prisoners outnumbered them and had taken hostages, they quickly turned the tide and captured Soichi and his men. The prisoners forced Soichi and a woman to lead them to the food storage, but they couldn't get in without a key. The key was with Asuha. The prisoners turned and prepared to go after Asuha. By now, Asuha has taken Hibiki to the infirmary, but the man who went to Utopia remains unresponsive, as if mentally traumatized. When Hibiki mentions his child, Mirai, the man briefly regains some clarity and says the child is in Utopia, but just as he was about to say something else, an arrow pierced through his body, killing him instantly. It was the prisoners. They had already caught up and had also taken Soichi hostage. Seeing Soichi, Asuha suddenly remembered that before he went to capture the prisoners, he had given her a gun for self-defense. She immediately pulled out the gun and aimed it at the prisoners. The sudden action successfully intimidated them. They claimed they only wanted the key to the warehouse and, in exchange, would release Soichi and the others. Asuha took out the key, but Hibiki instantly saw through their lie. The moment Asuha threw the key, the prisoners indeed prepared to shoot them with arrows. Hibiki moved faster. He grabbed the gun and started firing. The prisoners reacted quickly, dodging the shots. As they tried to chase, Hibiki had already escaped far away with Soichi and Asuha. Some of the prisoners went after them, while the rest returned to the hall. Using the key, they opened the warehouse, only to find a pitifully small number of canned goods. It wasn't enough to last a month. It seemed their only option was to search for the legendary Utopia. At that moment, they captured a woman. It turns out to be Iori, who has crossed paths with Hibiki and Kane before. Meanwhile, Rikudo and some of his men had caught up to Hibiki. He bet that Hibiki's gun was out of bullets. Just as he pulled back his bow to kill them, a helicopter suddenly flew overhead, capturing everyone's attention. That helicopter was most likely from Utopia, the last peaceful sanctuary in the apocalypse. Rikudo no longer cared about Hibiki and the others. He and his men frantically chased after the aircraft. Even if they couldn't catch it, at least they would know the direction. Soon, they lose sight of the helicopter, but they now know they need to head west. On the other side, after Rikudo chased the helicopter, Hibiki and the others tried to seize the opportunity to escape. But suddenly, a massive horde of zombies appeared around them, forcing them into battle. Afterward, they fled to a safe location, but soon, sounds came from outside. When they opened the door, it was Yura. This hypocritical woman saw Asuha and said she was glad to see her safe and sound. But in the next second, Hibiki slammed her against the wall. At the last second, Asuha stops him, even forgiving the person who betrayed her. Asuha pulled Hibiki aside and spoke to him. She defended Yura, saying that in this world, prioritizing one's own survival was only natural.
頭おかしいなお前。お前はいつか仲間に裏切られて殺される。そんと気づくんだよ。こんな奴らに命をかけたことが間違いだった。
In the end, Asuha returned the ring to Hibiki. She hoped he would join her in rescuing their captured companions. Hibiki thought about it after all. He and Kane had once been good partners too, so he agreed. The four of them set out to save their comrades. What Hibiki didn't know was that Kane was incredibly skilled in combat. Back when the chaos broke out in the prison, Kane had swiftly taken down two enemies and rescued Daichi, who had been stunned by the prisoners. Daichi was also Asuha's younger brother. Kane took Daichi to a safe area inside the prison, telling him to stay put. After that, she even attempted to rescue the hostages, though she ultimately failed. Kane then hid inside a room. Meanwhile, Iori, who was captured, easily unlocks her handcuffs and escapes. She happens to enter the room where Kane is hiding. Seeing each other, they were both overwhelmed with excitement. Iori had come to the prison specifically to find Kane. During their time in the cult, they had already built a deep bond of friendship. They planned to escape together. Hibiki and the others found it odd since entering the prison, they hadn't encountered a single prisoner. Why wasn't anyone guarding the place? Just then, Asuha's walkie-talkie crackled with a transmission. It was the voice of a doctor from their group. The doctor said that all the prisoners had left. No wonder the place was so empty. Asuha asks if her brother Daichi is there, and the doctor confirms he is, adding that everyone is safe and urging them to come quickly. Asuha finally let out a breath of relief, but Hibiki and Soichi exchanged glances. They silently agreed that this could be a trap. so they remained cautious. When they reached the main hall and pried open the iron doors, they found everyone gathered inside. Asuha asked where the prisoners had gone. Unfortunately, no one knew. Had the prisoners really left? Wait, where was the doctor with the walkie-talkie? Asuha had just realized something was wrong when, with a loud clank, the main door was locked behind them. The door on the other side was also sealed shut. Just then, Jun was shoved inside as well. He admitted that he had been threatened and had no choice but to follow their orders. Through the walkie-talkie, Asuha learned that her brother Daichi was now in Rikudo's hands. It seemed Daichi had not heeded Kane's warning. They lifted a table and rammed it against the iron door. As they made their escape, they ran straight into zombies. One of the men, Kenta, was incredibly strong. He took down the zombies in just a few blows. Soichi grabbed Hibiki and asked if he would fight to protect Asuha. Hibiki raised his shackled hands. "If I didn't have these, of course I would." Soichi nodded and went off alone to find the key. Just as he found it, a zombie tackled him to the ground. Luckily, Kane arrived just in time to save him. Soichi picked up the key, and they hurried back. When Hibiki and the others reached a corner, they were blocked by a massive group of zombies. Behind them, their pursuers were closing in. Jun and the others would only slow them down, so Hibiki told them to hide in a room while he lured the prisoners away. However, just as they barely managed to escape, Rikuto appeared, dragging Asuha's brother Daichi with him. Kaito and his men had also caught up. Now, Hibiki and his group were truly trapped. Iori hid nearby and witnessed everything, finally realizing that Hibiki was also here. At that moment, Soichi and Kane successfully arrived. Seeing that the prisoners were about to attack, Hibiki shouted for Soichi to throw in the key. Without hesitation, Soichi tossed the key over. However, the moment Hibiki unlocked his handcuffs, he immediately punched Kenta unconscious. Then he grabbed Asuha by the hair and dragged her in front of Rikudo. He also wanted to go to Utopia and demanded that the prisoners take him with them. Asuha, devastated, questioned him in disbelief.
嘘だよね。嘘だって言ってよ。みんなを助けてくれるって言ったじゃない。
何回も言っただろ。人を信じるな。
Seeing Hibiki turn against them, Soichi screamed in rage, but the prisoners held him down tightly. Rikudo and Kaito didn't even look back. All they wanted was Asuha, whether the others stayed or left. They didn't care. The prisoners escorted them through the bamboo forest, heading west, completely unaware that Iori was observing them from the shadows. At night, the prisoners found a house and decided to camp there. Kaito questioned Asuha about Utopia. Asuha claimed she knew nothing about it. Kaito scoffed. If that's true, then why does the symbol on the helicopter match the emblem you all wear? Who would believe you don't know anything? Asuha can only explain that it's their foundation's logo, but Rikudo had had enough. Kaito is too gentle. He decided to use his own methods. Rikudo forced Asuha to hold a pair of pliers, then pressed her hand down as he pulled out Daichi's fingernails one by one. The room filled with agonizing screams. Even Kaito seems disturbed by the brutality, but Rikudo forgot one crucial thing: making such loud noises at night was practically asking for death. Soon, the commotion attracted a large horde of zombies, throwing the prisoners into chaos. Seizing the opportunity, Iori, who has been tracking them, stabs and severely wounds Kaito. Freeing Asuha and Daichi, they fled down the main road, while fighting zombies. Hibiki notices Iori and the others and follows them. The moment Iori emerged, Hibiki tackled her, but when he got a closer look, he froze. It was his old acquaintance, Iori. Just then, a gun pressed against the back of Hibiki's head. It was a survivor. As Hibiki turned around, Iori knocked him out with a stick. Hibiki slowly opened his eyes. When he came to, he found himself tied up in a room. A little girl stood there, pointing a shotgun at him. Hearing the noise, Iori walked in. Hibiki had countless questions for her, but Iori had her own agenda. She told Hibiki to keep his mouth shut if he behaved. She might just tell him where his daughter was. At the mention of Mirai, Hibiki instantly became agitated and loudly demanded to know her whereabouts. Iori stomped on his head, forcing him to stay still. She then instructed the little girl to watch over Hibiki and left. Meanwhile, Asuha and Daichi learned from Iori and Wakamatsu's conversation that Iori and Wakamatsu had known each other for a long time. Asuha is furious at Hibiki for deceiving them, but Iori saw things differently. Given the situation, if Hibiki hadn't acted that way, he would have been killed. He was simply trying to survive. Iori had business to take care of, so she left Asuha and Daichi in Wakamatsu's care. Meanwhile, Soichi and Kane were following the prisoner's trail, searching for Asuha and the others. When they arrived at the prisoner's hideout, they found nothing but corpses. Asuha was nowhere to be seen. The only survivor was Kaito, severely wounded and tied up. Rikuto and the others were gone. Soichi kicked Kaito and demanded to know where Asuha was. Kaito remained silent. Soichi prepared to finish him off, but Kane stopped him. She told Soichi to go find Asuha, she would handle Kaito. After Soichi left, Kane slowly crouched down and told Kaito to reveal Asuha's whereabouts. If he talked, she would treat his wounds, but Kaito still refused to speak. Just then, a zombie appeared outside. Kane led it into the room. Kaito struggled desperately, he still refused to betray his leader. Seeing that Kaito was about to collapse, Kane still couldn't harden her heart. She killed the zombie, saving Kaito, and even gave his wounds some basic treatment. Suddenly, a figure appears at Iori. The moment she saw Kaito, she moved in for the kill. Kane stopped her, saying he could still be useful as a hostage. Since Kane said so, Iori put down her knife. Meanwhile, Wakamatsu brought Hibiki to the dining table, inviting him to eat with them, but Hibiki had already figured out from his conversation with the little girl that she knew something. He pleaded with Wakamatsu, asking him to tell him the truth. His daughter was the only reason he was still alive, he cried, begging Wakamatsu for information about Utopia. Wakamatsu suddenly said, "Why did you come here?" Hibiki froze. It seemed Wakamatsu knew him. At that moment, a bell rang outside, someone was coming. Wakamatsu grabbed his gun and rushed out. It's the group of prisoners. Rikuto grabbed one of them to test if Wakamatsu's gun had bullets. After Wakamatsu shot the prisoner dead, the others scattered. Taking advantage of the chaos, Wakamatsu led Asuha and the little girl to escape. Facing Hibiki, Wakamatsu said those words and left without looking back. Some of the prisoners chased after Wakamatsu and the others, while the rest stormed into the house. Ruka saw Hibiki and cut his ropes. As she leaned against a bookshelf, she accidentally triggered a hidden door. She and Hibiki entered to investigate and found what looked like a laboratory. Hibiki spotted something resembling a bomb. The next second, a loud explosion erupted outside. Seeing the red papers on the desk, Hibiki suddenly remembered. Only then did he realize that the explosives placed in his vehicle had actually been made by Wakamatsu. Rage surged through him. He found Wakamatsu and started beating him relentlessly, demanding to know why he had taken Mirai. Wakamatsu could only say he was following orders, but he didn't reveal from whom. Hibiki continued his furious assault. Suddenly, pain crossed his face. It was the little girl, she had stabbed him in the back. Taking the opportunity, Wakamatsu lunged at him, but Hibiki had already pulled out the knife and stabbed it straight into Wakamatsu's stomach. Wakamatsu collapsed, powerless. The sight terrified the little girl, she ran away in a panic. With his last breath, Wakamatsu revealed the location of Utopia. He begged Hibiki to protect his daughter, then took his final breath. Hibiki and Asuha caught up to the little girl, but to their heartbreak, she had already been bitten by zombies and quickly transformed into one, charging toward them. With no other choice, Hibiki was forced to kill her, then silently walked away into the distance. He had become so numb that he didn't even notice the zombies approaching. Eventually, he tumbled down a hillside along with them and lay weakly on the ground. Asuha considered killing him while he was vulnerable, but for some reason, she couldn't do it. That night, she even started a fire and used her body heat to keep him warm. Hibiki, mistaking Asuha for Kurumi, grabbed her hand. At that exact moment, Soichi arrived and witnessed everything. Soon, all the survivors from the prison arrive. It turned out that the prison had been overrun by zombies, so Kenta led the survivors to find Soichi. By now, Hibiki has regained consciousness and tells them the location of Utopia. On the other side, Daichi encountered Kane, Iori, and the others along the way. He told them the location of Utopia, and they decided to head there together. Meanwhile, Ruka had been following Hibiki. She had witnessed him killing Wakamatsu and therefore knew the location of Utopia as well. The three groups set out for Utopia. At night, Hibiki crafted a simple bow and arrow. He looked over at the sleeping Asuha and thought of how she had held him to keep him warm the previous night. Suddenly, Hibiki pulled back the bowstring. Soichi thought Hibiki was going to shoot him, but the next second, the arrow hit a zombie behind him. It turned out that a zombie horde had appeared. Hibiki shouted, waking everyone up, and they fought off the zombies, surviving the night. The next day, they began their trek over the mountain. Some are already exhausted, hungry, and doubting whether Utopia even exists. However, their concerns were unnecessary, because just around the mountain's bend was Utopia, a facility built with massive funding by the Niyama Foundation. As they walk, they hear cheers and hide to observe. It's the prisoners. The prisoners entered a tunnel, but soon after, gunshots rang out, and the group of prisoners fled in chaos. Several of them had been shot dead. What was happening? Hibiki led the group into the tunnel to investigate. At the end of the tunnel was an iron gate with a facial scanner. When it scanned Hibiki's face, a red light appeared, indicating he had no entry privileges. Asuha stepped forward and stood in front of the scanner. She spoke her name, and the scanner lit up green, confirming her access. Everyone was overjoyed, but then the machine announces that only those with Niyama family bloodlines and 5 companions may enter. The others were outraged. After climbing mountains and enduring hardships, they were met with this result. They climbed the Iron Gate, demanding an explanation, but the security system was triggered. Machine guns fired, and those climbing the gate were shot dead on the spot. The survivors fled the tunnel in panic, only to be met by another wave of zombies. They had no choice but to fight. After losing a few more people, they retreat to a nearby house, which temporarily holds off the zombies. Not long after, Kane and her group also arrived at the tunnel. As Asuha's brother, Daichi was easily granted access. When the iron gate opened, Kaito suddenly knocked Iori unconscious and dragged Daichi away. Kane couldn't leave Iori behind and could only watch as they escaped. Kaito is loyal. He knew that only 5 people could enter, so he wanted to bring his brother in as well. On the way, they encounter zombies. Kaito protects Daichi at all costs, as Daichi is the key to entering Utopia. At the last moment, the prisoners appeared and saved them. Kaito reunited with his brother, and they embraced. They retreat to a room to plot, planning to abandon the others and select 4 people to enter with Daichi. But Daichi had grown smarter. He had a plan of his own. When Rikudo came downstairs, he was ambushed and beaten by the prisoners. Daichi slowly stepped forward. It turned out that he had already convinced the prisoners to betray Rikudo. He had chosen who would enter Utopia, and Rikudo was not one of them. Meanwhile, back at Asuha's group, someone discovered a barrel of water. Several people rushed to drink it, but before long, they collapsed and died. Someone had poisoned the water. Jun's cyanide is missing from his bag. Who could have done something so cruel? It was clear that someone wanted to reduce their numbers to increase their chances of entering Utopia. Soichi immediately suspected Hibiki, as he had briefly left the group earlier. Faced with their accusations, Hibiki said nothing. He simply picked up his belongings and walked out, killing the zombies outside the door. Hibiki was strong enough to fend for himself. While hunting, he stumbled upon Kane and Iori. Hibiki kills a wild boar and returns to the house with Kane and Iori. Everyone was stunned just moments earlier. They had been on the verge of fighting each other. Not long ago, Jun found the culprit behind the poisoning. Momoko had been a nurse before, making her highly familiar with medications. The group wanted to punish the ruthless woman, but the moment was interrupted by Hibiki's arrival. They then forgot about everything else and started a fire to cook meat. It had been far too long since they had eaten something this good. Kane even brought a plate of meat to Momoko. Momoko ate while crying bitterly, regretting the foolish thing she had done. The next morning, Asuha and the others set out for the tunnel entrance, where they reunited with Daichi and the people he had chosen. Asuha made it clear she would not abandon anyone. She would go in alone first and convince those inside to let everyone in. The others were not worried about her running away. At this point, they all trusted her. However, just as Asuha stepped inside, zombies attacked from behind, forcing the others to defend themselves. One prisoner had just killed a zombie when an arrow suddenly pierced his head. Rikudo had somehow convinced the prisoners to side with him again. Now, he was here for revenge. Ahead, the prisoners charged at them, weapons in hand. Asuha had barely opened the iron gate when she heard the chaos outside and turned back. At the tunnel entrance, everything was in disarray. Trying to redeem herself, Ruka even helped Rikudo take down a threat. Rikudo grabbed her by the hair but ultimately let her go. As Asuha rushed out, she saw one of her companions using her brother as a human shield. He knew Daichi was the key, so he assumed no one would dare kill him. But he underestimated Rikudo. Rikudo didn't care if Daichi was the key. He stabbed him without hesitation. Rikudo killed Daichi and then turned his murderous intent toward Asuha, completely losing his sanity. Fortunately, Hibiki tackled Rikudo to the ground just in time. Then, Soichi pulled the grieving Asuha away, seizing the opportunity to escape. While Hibiki and Kenta stayed behind to cover their retreat, the survivors regrouped at the small house to strategize. Since Rikudo had killed Daichi, it meant he had given up on entering Utopia. His only goal now was to kill them all. The prisoners had set up camp near the tunnel, making it impossible for them to get inside. While discussing their options, Soichi made a decision. He would defect to Rikuto's side. Even if he couldn't enter Utopia, aligning with Rikuto increased his chances of survival. June and a few other men followed him. The rest of the group did not try to stop them. With her brother dead, Asuha became somewhat numb. She decided to take the women inside because the men were strong enough to survive on their own. Once inside, she would convince the people there to come out and bring Hibiki and the others in. Only 4 men were left behind. 2 of them panicked. Why weren't they chosen? How would they fight off the prisoners? Kane spoke up. She would stay and hold off the prisoners, creating an opportunity for Asuha's group to enter. Hibiki had helped her, so now she would return the favor. She had no intention of going to Utopia. However, Iori panicked. She had escaped from Utopia just to find Kane. If Kane refused to go just for Hibiki, she couldn't accept that. At that moment, Hibiki stood up, preparing to leave. Iori called after him. Your daughter, Mirai, is still in Utopia. Aren't you going to find her? She then revealed the truth. Mirai had been taken by Shinji. Hibiki finally remembered Shinji from season 3. Now, he realized Shinji was the son of Professor Shudo. Hibiki thought about forcing Asuha to take him inside, but after a brief struggle, he gave up the idea. He went outside and vented his frustration. Roaring in anger, Kane approached and reassured him she would help him get into Utopia. The other 2 men also tried to convince Hibiki, if he made a move, they would back him up. Meanwhile, while Asuha was outside alone, thinking, an old man approached her. He was actually an insider from Utopia. After checking the surveillance, he had come out to fetch Asuha, but she refused him. She couldn't sneak away alone and had to bring her friends with her. The old man reluctantly agreed to relax the restrictions, saying she could bring up to 5 more people, making 6 in total. Any more than that was absolutely out of the question. Before leaving, he left her a box. Inside the box were 5 handguns. Iori was thrilled when she saw the pistols. She quickly distributed them, keeping one for herself. Now armed, they no longer feared the prisoners, but Hibiki still couldn't let go of his child, so he returned with 2 men. However, as soon as they arrived, Yura and another woman shot the 2 men dead. Hibiki reacted quickly and hid. Yura suggested killing everyone. Just then, Kenta arrived and urged everyone to stop. He didn't want things to escalate and hoped they could talk it out, but one of the women ignored him and killed Kenta on the spot. Now, it was Hibiki's turn. Hibiki sprang from hiding, aiming an arrow at Yura, but Kane stepped in to stop him. Kane pleaded with Hibiki to stop killing. She promised to help Asuha and the others get inside first, then returned to figure out a way for Hibiki to enter as well. With that, the group left. Meanwhile, Soichi, June, and 2 others found the prisoners and expressed their willingness to join them. Rikuto was more than happy to welcome new members into his ranks. Just then, the women arrived. The prisoners were shocked that they had actually come and rushed forward to attack. But in the next instant, the women pulled out their guns and shot down those charging at them. Hibiki watched from the side. The prisoners hadn't expected the women to be armed and were caught off guard. However, Rikuto reacted quickly, and the tide of battle shifted again. Prisoners surrounded them from both the front and back, including Soichi and his group. But suddenly, Soichi turned on the prisoners and killed the ones next to him. He had switched sides once more. Standing with Asuha, one prisoner managed to kill a woman and charged at Asuha, but Hibiki shot him down with an arrow. Then, he engaged in close combat with the prisoners. June and the 2 men who had defected with Soichi ran over to Asuha, apologizing. They insisted they had never truly betrayed her, they had only wanted to survive. But the next moment, they were all shot in the head. Iori had executed them. Men like June would only betray them again in the future. Rikuto tried to ambush Asuha, but Kane intercepted him. Unfortunately, Kane was no match for Rikuto. Just as Rikuto was about to kill Kane, Kaido suddenly rushed in and took the blow for her. Kane had once saved him, and he refused to let her get hurt. Rikuto was stunned. At that crucial moment, Soichi and Hibiki finished off the remaining prisoners and turned their attacks on Rikuto. Rikuto couldn't withstand their combined assault and finally fell. Soichi then turned to kill Kaido. Kane shouted for him to stop. But just because Soichi spared him didn't mean Iori would. Kane had no choice but to shield Kaido with her own body. Since there were more than 6 people present, Kane chose to let Kaido go to Utopia while she stayed behind. This deeply upset Iori. Overcome with emotion, she finally blurted out the secret she had kept deep in her heart. She had always loved Kane. Kane was stunned. She never expected Iori to have feelings for her. Hibiki, unable to listen any longer, speaks up. He announced his withdrawal and told them to go to Utopia, but Asuha stopped him. Mirai is still inside. You have a reason to go. Then, she ordered Iori to put down the gun. Like Kane, Asuha didn't want any more meaningless killing. She would decide who to take, but Iori refused to listen. If Kane wasn't going, then there was no point in her going. If she couldn't kill Kaito, then she would kill Yura instead. Just as Asuha was about to pull the trigger, an arrow struck Iori. It was Hibiki who had shot her. He didn't want Asuha to stain her hands with blood. He wanted her to stay true to herself. Kane held Iori tightly, weeping in sorrow. Miss Kane is truly gentle, that was Iori's final thought. At last, the Chosen Six entered through the iron gate. At a branching path, Hibiki stopped. He told Asuha and the others to tell the people inside that he was dead. He wanted to rescue Mirai on his own. He didn't want to burden anyone else. Not long after, the old man reappeared. He led them to an elevator, which opened to reveal a grand, luxurious hall. The next moment, a group of fully armed soldiers appeared. A man slowly descended the stairs, and with that,
ようこそユートピアへ待ってたよマサ
the story came to an end. Let's meet again in Season 5.